Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's masterclass. So today we are going to have a masterclass with Parul Khedwal, who's very senior security engineer, and this masterclass is brought to you by Antwerp Academy. So before we move further, I'll just take some time to just talk to you about what Antwerp is. So Antwerp is an educational platform which is started by McKinsey and IIT alums, being from IIT Kharagpur. Right. Although we have started this platform, but this platform is majorly driven by the professionals, right, who are in cybersecurity industry. So if you go to our platform, you can see a lot of interviews. We have hosted from different professionals like Parul and other acclaimed professionals who have talked about their work, right, in cybersecurity, of how it is to be a cybersecurity engineer, what kind of issues they face in their professional life, and what kind of projects they work on. So these are, and these are done in form of a small question answer session. So you can, make use of those interviews to, improve your understanding about cybersecurity, right? And with our mission to bring you continuing with our mission to bring you the experience of experts, we have also launched a very well thought and well designed program in cybersecurity, a cyber boot camp. I will tell you about the cyber boot camp, cybersecurity boot camp in detail in the middle of the program for 5 minutes. Right. So without doing any further delay, let's welcome Parul. Hi, Parul. Very welcome on this masterclass. Uh, let's give her a big hand before we start the session. Am I audible?
Yes, Ram, you're audible, and thank you for the warm welcome and good morning, everybody.
So, guys, please, we have put everybody on mute. Please keep yourself on mute because it interferes with everybody's experience. Right, you can put your question on the panel. We will take them at the end of the session one by one. As much as we can answer, we'll try to answer your questions. The questions can be on not only the cyber attacks which we're going to deal right now, but also I think Parul will be happy to answer some of the questions with respect to career in cybersecurity. Right. So please attend the session till the end. You will be having a lot of information in the session. Okay. Okay, Parul. It's yours. Chandu, can you remove your Parul can share her own screen so that she can control the flow of the class. Chandu, you can remove your screen share.
I'll start sharing, so it will take because you've already made me co-host, so should not be a problem.
Yes.
Let me know once my screen is visible to you.
Yes. Yes. It is visible, Parul.
Okay. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the session. I hope you will gain quite good insights about cybersecurity and basically how cyber attacks or cyber kill chain work. Although the topic that we are going to talk about today, it is really basic. And in today's era, the cyber attackers have really evolved. But this gives you a very basic idea, like if at all you have to plan an attack in terms of cyber, how are you going to do it? How do you achieve it? And what is a hacker's mindset when he's planning an attack? How does he plan the execution? How does he does his own preparation? Because and it is important to understand a hacker's perspective, because when you are on the defending side, when you are on the blue side, you can have your defenses set up only when you understand how the attacker is going to attack, because accordingly you will set up your defenses. If you have no idea how what are the different ways through which the attacker can intrude, how will you put the defenses? So this is a basic understanding of like how an attacker creates an intrusion. So without further ado, I'll quickly dive into the topic. So yeah, the topic that we are discussing today is cyber kill chain. Cyber kill chain, as you see on the screen, it is a very defined step-by-step procedure Guys, can you please mute yourself, please?
ഇടയിലോ കേൾക്കാം
Just wait a minute, please. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So when we talk about cyber chain, it is a methodology, it is a model which was developed at Lockheed Martin's institution, and it is nothing but step-by-step procedure. As you see on the screen, there are 7 steps that typically an attacker follows in the attack life cycle. And the purpose of this model is to understand that what stages happen when an attack is conducted. So, and as you see on the screen, it helps security teams to stop an attack at each stage. So with this particular model, there are multiple variations that are present today, be it the diamond model, be it the MITRE framework, but they are all the derivatives of this model. In a sense, for example, MITRE comes up with a lot of TTPs, that is tactics, techniques, and procedures only to understand reconnaissance. Like there are 18 techniques for understanding different types of reconnaissance within MITRE. But what it is trying to answer, the stage 1 of this particular cycle. So let's get into what each stage means like. So number 1 is reconnaissance. As the term itself knows, reconnaissance is nothing but collecting the information, right? So in this step, what the attacker will do, it will choose a target. Now choosing a target itself is a big exercise for the attacker, because it will definitely need a lot of analysis on his end. For example, if I today want to launch an attack, I cannot just simply choose that, okay, I want to attack Google or Microsoft or a number of companies. You have to see that what are the tool sets you have, what are the vulnerabilities that you can exploit. And once you go out in public, let's say you're scanning a website, let's say I'm scanning Antworks website and I found that it is vulnerable to cross scripting. And I also know that Antwork has a huge database of so many students, so many experts. So I am able to somehow get into their system. I will get a lot of data to sell on the dark web. So if I want to do the same exercise with some other, let's say if I want to do the similar exercise with Amazon, am I hitting the right pages? Am I able to exploit the vulnerabilities? So when you are choosing a target, there is a lot of information that you need to gather, right? It could be publicly available information. For example, I know who is the CEO of a particular company, right? So if I want to send a phishing email and I somehow get the email of that person, so it's quite easy. Like if I want to send email to Jeff Bezos, what do you think? Will his email be not available to anyone, or cannot that be guessed, like Jeff Bezos at the rate Amazon.com or things of that nature? So I need to know, I need to collect information of different categories. It could be publicly available, it could be derivative of social engineering, it could be derived using technologies. So for example, when we are talking about vulnerability scans, when we are trying to attack different websites, so you might see that, okay, what are the web application vulnerabilities it is susceptible to? So in this stage, my entire job is to collect as much as information as I can. I have to log the target. I have to get maximum information about the target, which will help me in further stages. Because if I know that, okay, this website is vulnerable to this particular vulnerability, in the next stage, I know that I will have to weaponize my malware accordingly, because I know that this site is going to fall for it. Or maybe if I know that, okay, this organization, the empty awareness regarding cybersecurity is not good, so they are going to fall trap for my phishing attempt. So I will probably send it via phishing email. So things of that nature. Reconnaissance is all about collecting information as much as possible, right? You can correlate it similar to any physical attack, like a thief or burglar entering into your house. So he might witness your house for a couple of days before actually getting into the attack, that, okay, 10 a.m. everybody goes to office. After that, the house is empty till 4 p.m. till the time everybody comes back from the office. So 10 to 4 is a time when nobody is here, so it's a good time. So all these are nothing but collecting information so that you can plan your attack wisely. The second stage, so now you have collected enough information in the stage of reconnaissance, and the second stage is weaponization, right? So the attacker will use the gathered information to develop the exploit or malicious payload or malware or a weapon, right? So now you know that, okay, these are the information, this is my target, this is the weaknesses of my target, and I know that I can make a weapon. It could be anything in terms of cyber. It could be a virus, a worm, a ransomware, or exploit for a particular vulnerability, right? So depending on the target, depending on the purpose of the attacker, depending on the information that you have collected during reconnaissance stage, you are now going to create the weapon that you need to deliver in order to complete your attack, right? So it could be a combination of different payloads, like one at a time, and once that is executed, then you send the another weapon, or it could be a single weapon. So weapon is nothing but how you are going to actually achieve that particular attack, right? And the next stage is delivery. So when you have already weaponized that, okay, I know this particular website is vulnerable to, let's say, SQL injection. So I have SQL queries already written, which are actually going to give me the entire data set from their SQL database, right? Now, what I am supposed to do next? So next step would be to deliver that weapon to your target machine, right? If we again compare it to our thief example, so you have collected your information that, okay, 10 to 4 is my ideal time to get into the house. You have created a weapon that, okay, let's say the backdoor entry is a weak one, and you can cut the doorknob very easily. So that is a weapon you have weaponized to get in. Now, thoughts like you have to get inside the system, right? The delivery of that particular weapon has to happen. So this involves transmitting of the weapon to the target. Now, when it comes to delivery, there are a number of methods that an attacker can choose, right? It be via your USB drives, it could be via sending a phishing email, or you can even craft your payloads to exist on different websites. So a very good example that you might have seen of the website delivery mechanism is there are so many genuine websites that we visit on a daily basis, and you might see advertisement pop-ups like, okay, click here to win iPhone, or your system is impacted, click here to download free antivirus, and things of that nature. So in that particular case, maybe you are not really on a bad website, but the website is not really safe in a way that other malicious attackers, they are able to host their malicious code on their website. So if you go and click on such advertisements, it redirects you to different URLs, right? And it's not really a good thing to do. Hackers deliver their malicious content. You might be getting a number of phishing emails that, okay, you have been awarded lottery of so and so purpose. Please click here to give your bank details. So this is the classic example of phishing, right? So when it comes to delivery, there are different methods. So nowadays, cloud storage is quite popular. Although a few years back, USB drives were really, really popular. And I mean, I've even seen USB drives like roaming here and there in the corporate environment. And there are people who are nice enough to take those up and plug it to the system just to see, okay, even if it is for a good cause, that, okay, we'll see what is there in the drive so that we can give it to the right owner, or let's plug it. So as soon as you receive a pen drive, the first instinct that you will have in your head is plug that USB drive and see what is inside. So usually drive-by downloads, drive-by USB, it was very, very common way of delivering malwares. And a few years back, if I'm not wrong, somewhere in 2012, a very major incident happened in one of the Indian organizations. I won't be able to disclose the name though, but that was driven by a USB. It was just a USB was dropped in the office premise and an employee plugged in. And that's where the entire malware lateral movement happened. So when it comes to delivery, you should be really like, I'm also talking about the defensive measures at each step, right? So delivery is a place where blue team, which is ethical hackers, they have to be really cautious, like how much awareness is an employee having, what are your defenses against phishing emails, do you have appropriate email gateway rules in place or not, and so things, right? So if you see on the screen, it's written humans are the weakest link to an organization usually, and that's quite true because of this third stage, which is delivery stage. Okay, so delivery is nothing but when your attackers just try to deliver the weapon to your target system, and it could be in any particular way. It could be via an email, and there could be a number of different ways. Even the attackers are evolving. Right, so now the attacker has already delivered the malware to your system. Let's take an example of phishing here. So I received a phishing email and it said that, okay, you have received an invoice for a thing that you did maybe last week. And please download this attachment. And I downloaded that attachment to my system. Okay, so the delivery has happened successfully. Now, what would be the next stage? So the next stage would be exploitation of that malware, which is delivered to my system. So in this step, it is time for the malware to get into action, right? So whatever malicious code, whatever is written in that particular payload, that will now get triggered to exploit different things. And definitely differs from attacker to attacker, what is the thing that they're trying to achieve in the exploitation stage. Maybe an attacker does not want to get detected, so he will not exfiltrate the data in the exploitation stage itself. That okay, as soon as the malware gets downloaded, start sending me packet captures of the keyboard, which is like what the user is typing on the key. This is typically called as keylogger malware. And some attacker could be right that okay, I do not want to like my purpose is big, I don't want to get detected immediately, I will stay dormant for 2 hours, then I will try to escalate to a higher privilege, for example admin user or root user. For that, I know that this is a vulnerability with the system, that it does not have multi-factor authentication in it or something of that nature, and that's how my malware payload is going to work. So in the exploitation stage, it typically depends on the attacker, what he is trying to achieve. So this is a stage where your malware typically folds, where your malware typically starts doing the changes on the system or whatever the attacker is trying to achieve. Now, once the malware unfolds, once the exploitation stage is already on, it has escalated the privileges, it has let's say even unzip the files or anything that the malware was designed to do. Now the next step would be installation. Right now here what you're doing trying to do is you want to create an access point for the attacker. So if think like an attacker, I'm an attacker, I delivered a payload to your system. After that, I need to know whether that payload is working or not. After that, I need to know like that payload needs to send me messages that, okay, boss, you send me for this reason and I've collected all the data. Now, where should I send it? Right. So this is nothing access point, and people usually call it as backdoor, but there are different varieties in that as well. So installation is like a method which is typically crafted by an attacker to maintain a constant access to a system. Because once you have dropped a malware to the system, you want to make that system as your bot, so that the system works in your at your command, so that you can use the system again for launching further attacks, right? So now what the attacker in the installation stage tries to do is it might install a web shell so that the machine will call back to that web page for installing the for establishing the connection. It could install new scheduled tasks, like for example, give me all the details of all the cron jobs that are running on the system. Depending again on the whatever the motive of the attacker is, it could create new user account. So many things can be done during the installation stage itself. During the installation stage, when you are installing a number of malwares, or maybe like you are scheduling tasks, you are escalating privileges, all of that you are doing, all of that you are installing so that you get a complete command over the system. So the following stage is command and control. Now, what attacker wants to do, so this is nothing but like what you call as phoning home. Every time a malware is downloaded, it needs directions from the attacker that, okay, what do I need to do next? In the malware code, I wrote that, okay, as soon as the malware gets downloaded in the system should contact this particular website. And from that website, a new set of malware will be downloaded. And what would be the purpose of that malware? It could be anything. The purpose of that malware could be stealing the info from the cookies, for example, stealing the passwords, or the malware could be written in a way that it should spread laterally across the network so that other systems get infected. Or like, again, depending on the purpose of the attacker, it could differ. But the point is, in this particular stage, the system is completely in control of the attacker, right? You see on the stage one, the step one, an attacker needs his payload to call back to him every few minutes or hours, depending on the stealth he needs to maintain. Right. So if my system keeps calling the attacker that, okay, what do I need to do next every single minute? These kind of processes, they can easily get detected by your security controls. So he might actually do it on a different basis, maybe let's say once in 2 days. So one single connection to a website in 2 days might look genuine, might just pass out just like that. But if my system is connecting to a website every single hour, every single day at the same time, then I think it could be something suspicious. So when you are in blue team, for this particular stage, you might want to write rules on your SIM platform that, okay, for any particular domain, if I see more than 5 hits in the span of this much time, and it's repeatedly occurring on the same time every day, give me an alert. This is how even your blue team mechanism, your alerting mechanism, your SIM rules are crafted based on each stage, right? If we have to talk about, let's go back to reconnaissance stage. Now in reconnaissance, I'm an attacker. I'm trying to find what are the open ports on the system. Now I'm scanning all the ports. So how do you scan a port, right? You will send a ping packet. And if you get an acknowledgement back from the port, that means the port is open. It is sending replies. So I am scanning for ports, like I've sent a packet to port 0, 1, 2, 3, and I'm doing it till, let's say, port 5000. So if I have to write a rule to detect reconnaissance, I would say that, okay, from one particular source to one particular destination, if I'm seeing, let's say 500 hits towards at least a minimum of 20 different ports in a span of 1 hour, categorize this as port scanning and send me an alert. And you can also establish defenses accordingly that block that IP immediately so that there is no scanning. So if you understand each stage of the cyber kill chain accordingly, you can create your defenses accordingly, you can create your detections, right? As a blue team, if you cannot prevent the attack, the least you can do is at least detect the attack so that you can control it before the damage is thick. So coming back again to stage 6. So in this particular stage, the attacker basically sets up a command and control server. And command and control server is nothing but a single server which the attacker maintains. And on one command, if it releases one command on that particular server, it goes to all the botnets associated with it. It goes to all the systems that are under compromise and asking this command and control server that, okay, what should be my next action, right? And these days, because the attacker surface is so huge, command and control as a service is being sold in the dark web market, where let's say today I want to launch an attack towards and work. I do not have a good command and control server in place. I do not have a botnet, so I can rent that service from a deep dark web provider. So that crucial it has become to establish your defenses, because every stage, everything is available very easily. And the last stage again, so the entire activity from stage 1 to 6 is crafted basically to finally reap out the benefits, be it our thief example or whatsoever. So the ultimate is to get the stuff and run out of the house. So actions on objective is where your attacker would try to establish the entire foothold and gain whatever he had planned to. For example, his motive was to exfiltrate the data, that whatever data is available on the system, I want all the picture, photos, Excels, username, password, etc. And I'll sell it, or I'll for blackmail or whatsoever purpose. Or maybe I don't want to do anything with the data. I will just encrypt the data and I will demand ransom in exchange for that particular data. Or maybe let's say I am working for Amazon and Flipkart is my competitor. Sale is going on in both the websites. My entire job is to take Flipkart website down so that all the user traffic comes towards my website. So in that case, my entire objective is DOS, the denial of service attack, that the site should go down. I have no interest in the data of that particular website. So again, whatever the attacker's motive was, in the last stage, he would try to at least gain complete benefit for which he has planned the entire attack. And as a part of this particular stage, there are few attackers that are bold enough just to come out open. And then there are few attackers who cover their tracks so that they go undetected, so that as and when they feel like launching the same attack again, they can come back. So this is covering tracks is a phenomena where attackers would try to clear their logs, clear their track, that investigators, security analysts cannot trace them back. So in this particular stage, after their motive is achieved, they might clear the logs. They will make everything back to normal as to how it was before the attack. So actions on objective is something which ideally an attack should never reach to, because this is where you are already trapped. The max amount of damage happens at this particular stage. So as a security analyst, you have to put your best foot forward to create enough defense and detections for all the 6 stages. And if it exfiltrates, the attacker is able to come till stage number 7. Only in that case, you have to go for, remediation methods, like, okay, now he has made the site down. What do I do next? So I will back it up from another cloud data center that I have it on another premises. Or let's say my data is exfiltrated. So, okay, well, damage is done already, but what max I can do rather than paying ransom, I had a backup on another server or on cloud storage. I can just format the system and get the data backup from that particular data storage. So this is a stage where mostly what you perform is remediation, but all the 1 to 6 stages is where you perform defense and detections. So yeah, this is all about the 7 stages of cyber kill chain. Let me know if you have any questions, and here I'll take a pause and I'll let Ram continue.
Yeah, thanks, Parul, for such a detailed description of the cyber kill chain. So, guys, I think I had missed out introducing Parul at the beginning. Right. So, Parul, I'll just give a introduction to her so that you understand whatever you are being, told it is coming from somebody who is kind of well versed in her field. So Parul has a 7-year plus of work experience in cybersecurity, and she has worked in very acclaimed organizations like Cognizant, Accenture India and Sweden, right? And she's right now working in a very renowned company which is in auto parts, right? And she has the certifications like CEH. She's Splunk certified architect, and at her work, I think she has very great knowledge about the Splunk. She is Qualys VM certified, MS Azure Security Associate, right? And she has a lot other certifications also. So the idea is that whatever you are hearing from the horse's mouth itself, right? It's not something who is academically in this field, but somebody who is dealing these issues day in and day out, right? And with that, I will introduce you the NTWalk experiential program. Right, we have created this program, in consultation with a lot of experts like Parul. Right, I just heard a few people also putting a question here now that there aren't too many jobs in cybersecurity. How to get into a job of cybersecurity? So, guys, first of all, there are like no lot many jobs in cybersecurity in level one level, and actually the companies are struggling to get the cybersecurity professionals. Right. The problem is sometimes it is difficult to find the companies, and companies may find it difficult to find the students. The other problem is the proper skilling. Right. So when I hear, when I talk to students about the cybersecurity, like if they're interested in cybersecurity, what exactly they are doing. Most of the people, they go for the ethical hacking experience, right? They try to get the ethical hacking certification. But the fact is that, let's say I know a very big company who has, let's say, around 1,000 people. Of 1,000 people who are in cybersecurity, only they have the red team of 15 people, right? Which uses the ethical hacking, concepts or do the hacking themselves, right? Lot of other jobs are spread across different areas, right? So Parul, can you go to the next slide? Right. So there are a lot of other areas, where companies are heading, and we are not aware of it, right? To bridge that gap, actually, we have started this Entroc experiential learning program, and this program has been designed in consultation with recruiters, experts, to see what skills are required in a candidate to have a successful career in cybersecurity. So the boot camp that we are launching, the experiential learning program that we are launching, is 16-week long course. Of the 16 weeks, 12 weeks are totally dedicated to your core learning, while 4 weeks at the end we are going to spend mostly on improving your soft skills. We are trying to make sure that you are ready for your interviews. You are ready to talk to your and whenever you join your program, your company, you are ready to write proper presentations. You are able to talk to your seniors to and do all those stuff, right? So that's why we are placing 4 weeks of special attention on these aspects also. So classes, so our classes are usually on weekend. We have 2 class on Sunday, 1 class is on Saturday, right? So we have divided the whole program into 10 different parts, and each part is taken by the expert who has knowledge in that part itself. I will go through the program also in detail in little bit. Right, in this program, we are not only going to have the live classes, but we are also going to have a lot of projects, and these projects are there to give you exposure to whatever you are going to do in your company when you join a company, right? So these projects are there to get your hand dirty in this in this profession, right? Parul, can you go to the next slide? Yes. Yes. So this is the brief of our program, right? It will start with the introduction, right? So our this program is going to be based upon the Kali Linux, right? Where you will install it and you'll do most of the projects there. Right, then we'll strictly move to network security, which is kind of the very basic of the whole cyber security. Then we'll go to the cyber attacks, which will be again be taken by Parul herself. Right, we will then do other very big part, which is the web application security, which includes the application security, API security. Then we'll move into the the SOC part of the program, which is incident management. Right. Parul, you can go to the next slide. Post this, we will have the digital forensic, right, where which is this is also a growing area in cybersecurity. Right, we will touch a little bit around the governance risk and compliance, which is a little bit of a higher concept, but it is good for you to you have this concept because they will help you not only in your interviews but also when you join a company, it will help you grow your career. Right, we'll also touch a little bit around identity and access management. So here again, you will be basically be working on the conceptual part because the tools here are all proprietary. So you will not be able to work on the tools of identity access management, but we will show you how to handle the whole thing, right? While all the other islands, that's in digital forensics, you'll be working with tools which are being used in industry. In case of network security, also you are going to use Wireshark, you are going to use Nmap, right? And the later part of our program, you will touch upon the cybersecurity, cyber threat intelligence, and we have also included a full classes, four classes on SIEM tools, right? So security information and event management is one thing that is demanded by a lot of companies for L1 level, right? Because the SIEM tools are the one which are you going to use at the beginning of your career, right? So we are going to have this course on IBM Radar, QRadar. You will be trained on IBM QRadar, and this will help you to be part of the SOC team as an L1 analyst as soon as you graduate from our program. Right. So guys, this is the whole idea about our program. We have shared a link to you. You can pick up, sign up on that link, and one of our educational counselors will reach out to you. They will tell you more about the program. So please register there, right? And trust me, guys, there are a lot of jobs in cybersecurity, right? And because of the recent instance of also cyber hacks, uh, uh, the banks are being mandated now to set up their own SOC system. RBI has mandated all the banks should have a SOC team with themselves, right? So the growth is phenomenal in cybersecurity. Number of jobs are going at a very fast rate, and actually there is lack of talent in this field instead of lack of jobs, right? So please register on the link that we have given you, and we'll reach out to you. Parul, please go ahead.
Sure, Ram. Thank you. So yeah, before we move on to the next part of this session or the next part of the class, I mean, I'm sure whoever has joined the session, they have joined because they have some sort of interest in cybersecurity, they have some sort of enthusiasm to get into this field. But there are very less people who actually follow cybersecurity to the core. And I say this because cyber attacks, they are everywhere. So if we have to talk about even one particular attack, it could be uh, at any like it could be related to anything in your life. And I'm not sure if any one of you are aware of any of the recent attacks that has hit Indian users badly. So I would like to see that in the chat window if somebody wants to give a try that, okay, what are the very recent attacks that India has been dealing with or Indian companies have been dealing with. Yeah, so Shruti Laya has actually came up with the very recent one, which is the Air India data breach, Domino's India, Big Basket. Yes, so I'm glad to see that the audiences here are quite aware of the different attacks. And it is important to know because in the digital world that we are living today, where everything has gone online, where everything is so digitized, whether you have to order your food, whether you have to book a cab, or you have to make any transaction, everything is online and users are not really aware what kind of data they are dealing with, what is the sensitivity of the information, what is the sensitivity of the application that they're using, and so on and so forth. And this is the reason that the attacks are growing bigger and bigger every day. So if you see about the case of Domino's or Air India, in almost all of those attacks, the motive of the attacker was not to create any harm to the user, but to get the data of the user so that it can be used for multiple purposes. So in case of Domino's, almost 20 million user data was leaked. So now what they have is they have your phone number, they have your name, they have your address. Now for you it could be like, okay, they just have my name and phone number, what max they can do. But no, from a perspective of cybersecurity, they can use your identity to create, further attacks. How do you deal with it? So data is also really, really important. It is very important to understand how much privacy is required when you're giving different permissions to the applications that you're installing. So I'm talking about all this just to give you a sense, just to give you an idea that attacks are happening everywhere. We can just discuss one or two attacks that have become quite popular or that were very big on a scale that they became the talk of the town. But having said that, it is always important that you watch around yourself, you keep yourself aware of the cyber news, that what could be the different attacks that can actually happen at any level, day in and day out. And this, once you're having this kind of awareness, this is going to really help you in the interviews. For example, when I take fresher interviews, I've seen that people say that, okay, I'm very enthusiastic in coming into cybersecurity field, please give me this opportunity and I'll not let you down. Okay, absolutely taken. But again, if you were really that interested, are you quite aware? Can you give me some real life example when you had to go through some cyber attack? Because it's everywhere. I myself have got phished once. So just be aware. And yeah, with that, I'll quickly move to the attack that we are going to discuss today. So WannaCry attack, it was one of the biggest ransomware attacks in the cyber history, and it happened back in May 2017. And it was really one of the most devastating cyber attacks because just in one day, just in one day, oops, just in one day, it spread to 150 countries and more than 230,000 computers, they were hacked just in a single day. And because this attack went on and on for almost a period of 9 days, after which it was taken down completely, you might just assume or you might just calculate the amount of damage it could have done. And all big companies, like these are just few examples that you see on the screen. The entire UK's National Health Service that was devastated for 2 complete days. They were not able to upload or download or access any system that had to deal with patients' data. So think of how big that attack would have been. And it was not targeted to a geography, it was not targeted to an industry. If you see, be it Nissan Motors, Hitachi, FedEx is a courier service, healthcare, education sector, universities in China, every single every single sector was impacted with it. So what made WannaCry so big? Let's dig a little more deep into what exactly WannaCry was. So WannaCry was a crypto ransomware. So there are two kinds of ransomware basically. One is crypto ransomware, which just encrypts the data, which just encrypts the file and keeps it there on your system. Okay, and then it will ask you to pay the ransom, pay the money to get the decryption key. But the other type of ransomware is locker ransomware, which will lock the system itself. So the target device would be locked out itself so that as soon as even if you open the device, you won't be able to use anything. It would just lock your operating system itself unless and until you replace the OS image, you won't be able to access your system. So WannaCry was not that category. It was just a crypto ransomware. You can use your system, you can read your emails, you can use your Chrome or applications, but whatever files you had on that system, all of that will be encrypted with an extension called as .wcry, which is .WannaCry. And again, so this is how WannaCry looked like. Now, now when we talk about like who was affected by WannaCry ransomware, what was the behavior of that particular ransomware, how did it come into picture, and what were the malware. So now, because we have already spoken about the cyber kill chain stages, I would want you to correlate different stages when we are talking about this attack. Okay, so WannaCry targeted the devices which were running Microsoft Windows OS. So if we talk about reconnaissance stage, when this particular attacker, which was the group, very infamous group called as Shadow Brokers, when these attackers were planning the attack, they would have maybe done reconnaissance for Mac OS, for Windows OS, and they found that, okay, the vulnerability that they can exploit is present in Windows OS. They can only target that particular operating system. Right, so this is how they perform the first stage, the reconnaissance stage. Here they log their target that, okay, my target, I'm fixing the target as only the systems that are running Microsoft Windows operating system. The other and when you compare the number of Mac devices versus the Windows devices on this planet, definitely as of today, Windows are much higher than, and even back then in 2017, Windows were much in number. The second thing that they crafted was they made the payload in the form of a worm. So what is the difference between a virus and a worm? A virus needs a vector to initiate, to get that action, to get itself in action. But a worm is something that spreads on its own. So if I have to make it even simpler to explain, if we talk about a virus, the most disastrous virus that we are currently dealing is coronavirus. So virus needs an infection vector. Until and unless you go and meet a person having corona, it cannot just travel to your home, right? So that's the thing about virus. It needs an infection vector, but the worm type attack vector, it's self-propagating. If it is on one system and there are, let's say, 50 devices connected to that system, even if those devices are not talking to each other, there's no connection between each other, it will spread on itself. So this was the most significant thing about it, and due to this reason, it just went all across the world just in one day. Just in one day, it got spread in 150 different countries. Right? So what was it trying to do? It was trying to leverage a bug in the Windows operating system. And that bug was nothing but a SMB port flaw. Okay, the server message log, port number 445, it had a flaw which it basically exploited to exfiltrate data. And the exploit, the weapon that they used here, that was called as the malware Eternal Blue. Okay, and what Eternal Blue was designed to do, it was designed to propagate, it was designed to take advantage of that particular bug and then propagate it to different systems through that file sharing port and actually cause the further data exfiltration. So if we talk about like what is Eternal Blue, right? So this was basically an exploit that was written for the vulnerability that Windows operating system had, and the vulnerability ID is mentioned on your screen. And the good or the bad part is this was actually a weapon which was designed by United States National Security Agency. So there are even chance, like when they say that, you know, the Third World War might happen for water, now the experts are even predicting the Third World War, it would be a cyber warfare. Every country is preparing its cyber weapons to be really, ahead of that war. So that, okay, if let's say tomorrow there's a war and I want to exfiltrate data out of China, I need to have such weapons. I need to have some exploits so that I can get that data exfiltrated. But these kind of exploits, they are not really, they are placed in quite a secure place so that, you know, it cannot be used for bad purposes by the bad hackers. But Shadow Brokers Group, in April 2017, they were able to get into National Cybersecurity Agency's system. And from there, they stole it and posted it online for everybody's use. So this was particularly an exploit that was written to take advantage of the SMB vulnerability. And as a part of this exploit, there were different variants that were written. There were different pieces that were written. For example, double pulsar was the malware that was the backdoor. So I think when we were discussing kill chain, we discussed what is a backdoor used for. So this was nothing but for establishing the command and control, right? And even this was something that was again developed by NSA and was actually exfiltrated. So this picture kind of shows that how was WannaCry ransomware working and how was it spreading. So for example, the delivery mechanism. Now you see here, this is all about the delivery. You got a phishing email or somebody sent you a document or you just click on malicious advertisement and the ransomware got dropped on your PC. Okay. Now your PC is infected, but your data is still not encrypted, right? Now, what your machine would need to do, it will call the command and control server that, okay, I'm here on the system. Please command, what am I supposed to do next? Then the malicious server or the command and control server will send the encryption key and it will encrypt the data. Now your computer is not just infected, but also your data is encrypted, right? So what was the defense mechanism here? If your PC was updated with the, okay, so the another interesting thing which I forgot to tell was, so this particular vulnerability, it was acknowledged by Microsoft in the month of March. And in in April first week, they released a patch for that vulnerability. That, okay, this is a loophole and you need to install this piece of code to actually close this port or actually get rid of this vulnerability. And those organizations who actually quickly patched that vulnerability within the first month, they were the one who were safe from WannaCry attack. So yeah, this is about how the WannaCry, so the outdated PCs, which there were no patches applied, they were infected. So this is how the modus operandi for the WannaCry ransomware looked like. And this was the kind of message which used to appear on people's system that, okay, WannaCry decryptor 2.0 and your files have been encrypted. If you want to recover your file, how do you pay? You need to pay to this Bitcoin address. So Bitcoin has been popular and from past, I think, 1.5 decades. And it also gives you a kind of a ransom timing that, okay, if you do not pay within 6 days, 23 hours, 57 minutes, either your files will be lost or your payment will be raised in 2 days. If you do not pay, you'll have to pay double, something of that kind. So this was the message that was popping on different computers that were actually infected with WannaCry. So again, we now already discussed that, okay, what happened to WannaCry, what were the payloads used, how did it propagate? It propagated via SMB port. But how was that attack taken down? Such a huge attack, like spreading to 150 countries in 1 day and impacting millions and millions of systems worldwide. What was it that actually, curbed the attack? So this attack, I mean, the story is really interesting. If you have time, you can go to this particular website, or even if you go to the Wikipedia page of WannaCry, you will find that story. So Mark Hutchins was a security researcher. I mean, is a security researcher based out of UK, and he was working on this particular. Like, he actually had a test system, and he actually uh, kind of got the attack on his system by, I mean, purposely, so that he can get the payload on his system and he can actually study that payload. So he got an infected machine for himself, and he was trying to decode the script that was written. So after almost 48 hours of reverse engineering the malware, he identified these two domains that you see on the screen right now. So the first domain is like AYYLMAOTGSS blah 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 .com. And the second domain was again IQUS, whatever. So the malware was written in such a way that the command and control, how will that particularly happen? And this was designed by National Security Agency, so they had to had a kill switch that, okay, if at all something goes wrong, we are a government owned organization, if at all something goes wrong, how are we going to stop this attack? So how what it wrote in the code was, okay, now eternal blue is present on the system. Next step would be it will call the command and control server to get the encryption key. But they added an additional step in between that, okay, firstly, the system should go and check this domain. They should try to establish a connection with this domain. If the domain is found, do not encrypt the data. Do not ask the encryption key. But if the domain is not found, my CNC server will send the encryption key and the data will be encrypted, right? So they wrote it in a way that, okay, if at all this particular domain is online, it's available, no encryption is going to happen. And if you look at this particular domain, of course, they were never existent. Why would somebody register a domain like this? People register a domain which has some meaning, like google.com, handwork.com, amazon.com, or even if there are, long domains, they do have a meaning. Nobody is going to have a website of this nature, the domains that you see on the screen. So that is the reason they just wrote a scribble domain, and that was the kill switch. So once that researcher found that, so he immediately went to GoDaddy, he purchased these two domains, registered those two domains, and made it live. And back in 2017, if you Google this particular domain, you will see just a website running up. Okay. And that's when the entire attack was broken down. And every time the system, different systems to which Eternal Blue was spreading, every time it was trying to contact this particular domain, they were finding a successful connection. HTTP traffic, the page was loading for them. And that's when the kill switch happened, right? Now, as soon as the page is live, do not ask for encryption. And that's how the attack got stopped. And once these kill switches were registered, of course, the next step was of the attacker was, okay, what happened now? We cannot get the, we want to keep the attack going. So they tried DDoS attacks on these domains. So these domains go down. But at that particular time, different countries like Europe, UK, USA, they came together and they hosted this particular website across 12 different data centers around the world, so that no matter how many connections, how much, like even if we are getting 10 billion requests per second on these domains, it should be live, it should be up. So that's how WannaCry attack came to an end. So yeah, this was an interesting one. So I think we discussed it just to give you an idea that what are attackers' psychology when they are, or mindset when they are trying to craft an attack, and how, and if you go for interview, like if you want to talk about some attack, that okay, what is one recent attack, or if not recent, what is one attack that actually amused you, or you had a good knowledge on. So WannaCry is one which you can read about, like we have just discussed in very high level, but there are so many interesting things that were actually present in this particular malware. So that is the reason it is still considered one of the most, what do you say, difficult but big. And as a security analyst, I learned a lot from this attack. So yeah, I think this is all from my end. Hope you had a good session. By that, I'll stop sharing and I'll switch it back to Ram.
Yes. Thanks, Parul. Parul, probably we can, although we have already, crossed our time, but we can take one or two questions if it is fine.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, Parul, there's one question from Sam Rao. So, is it better to do masters in cybersecurity here in India or abroad? The same question is for the job. Is abroad jobs are better, or there are enough jobs in India in cybersecurity?
Well, I think this question is quite subjective, I would say, and it depends on a person. Like it definitely differs from a person to person basis. For example, if I have to talk about myself, I started my career in cybersecurity right after my BTech, and I've been doing well so far. And then there are people who actually get into master's degree, be it here or be it outside. Yes, when it comes to MS, there are plenty of courses overseas that are like really really good, because the kind of internship and exposure they provide you, uh, that is something which is not really applicable to Indian education system as of today. Like we are more of writing the exams in semesters, but with MS in states or something, you get on like very good exposure right on the industry. Like even in my organization we have interns coming in. So the main thing is, what is your purpose? You want to do masters just for the sake of a degree so that you land into a job? Then I would say no, masters is not needed for a job. If you have good awareness, if you have good knowledge on the fundamentals of cybersecurity, even then you can get a job. But if your purpose is like you really want to before actually landing into a proper job, you want to have that hands on the job, like how do things work in a corporate environment. Then if you want to have MS for that reasons, you can do it overseas. Again, a lot of exposure so I would not say anything is good or bad. It definitely depends on the purpose that you're trying to achieve out of that degree.
Okay. So Parul, there's one again very generic question, right, which I think a lot of people have in their mind is, so this is from Mitali Joshi, right? So there are few jobs in cybersecurity field for freshers. How can we get into this field as a fresher? So first of all, Mitali, there is no lack of job in cybersecurity, right? So Parul, you can answer the, the remaining part, right? How we can get into this field as a freshers?
Yeah, so I get that mindset because I've been there as well 7 years back. So I mean, if you have really a target that okay, I have to land into a job of cybersecurity, that preparation has to happen. That because see, there are n number of job portals today. When we are in digital era, like I remember 7 years or 8 years back, there were not much jobs getting posted on LinkedIn. We used to go to different tech parks, walk in interviews and things of that nature. So now it is much more easier. You have n number of job portals. You create your alerts there. You study the JD, the job description, which is put there for the freshers. That okay, if I have to give you a job description, what do I see in a fresher? Good knowledge. If you have, no matter what background you're coming from, if you're coming from for a cyber security job, you need to understand computer networks, because if you do not know how does data travel in a network, what is internet, how are you and me connected, what is packet exchange, what is TCP, right? If you do not know the basics, I will not be able to like I would not expect you to actually curb an attack when it is in progress. So I can teach you that okay, this is how one attack happens, this is how second. But if you do not know even the basic language that I'm talking, that for example we talk about port scan, that okay, in reconnaissance he will do port scan. Now if you do not know as a computer engineer what are different ports on a system, then it can get difficult for you. So as a fresher, my advice would be first focus on computer networks. Second, focus on fundamentals of cybersecurity. Third, always have good keyword alerting set up on different job boards. That's very important, because like if you just write that on LinkedIn that okay, I want security job, I want it in Bangalore, you might even end up getting a door security job as well, right? You have to use the right keywords. Now you want, you know what is cyber security, use the word cyber, right? If you are specifically interested in one particular domain like pen testing, use that particular keyword, that I want to get alerts for pen test, I want to do get alerts for incident handler, I want to get alerts for compliance analyst, right? So they're different. If you just write security jobs, you might not get. So keyword search is very important. You should practice it very often on different portals, and I'm sure you will find much more openings than you were finding it before. So that is on the part of searching the job. And second point is preparing yourself. Again, have good knowledge on the networks, have good knowledge on the cyber basics, like very basic. What is the difference between virus and a worm? What is cyber kill chain? So here you're not really dealing with an attack. That is something that you might even learn on the job. But that mindset of, and cybersecurity is, I would say, a really, really demanding job. So if you're somebody who wants to get really comfortable job, then I'm sorry, this is not really the domain for you, because I mean, the nature of it, right? An attacker can launch an attack at any time of the day. So I've had days when I was there in office for 2 days, like especially during this WannaCry ransomware attack. So if, because the interviewers, like even I give these kind of scenario based questions, stress based questions, you should have the right attitude to handle with it. If I give you that, okay, during an attack, if you have to let's say log in midnight and have to give your best, what would be your answer? If you say, ma'am, this won't be possible for me, rather you can say that, yes, I do have family responsibilities, this and that, but I know how to manage it. This is my rigor, cybersecurity. So attitude and aptitude, both combination would be required for a fresher to get into this field. That would be my answer.
Thanks for Parul for such a detailed answer. So Parul, there's one very specific question, right? So there is so we have got one question that he's a IM specialist, right? And he now wants to start his career in cybersecurity. How should he approach? What kind of courses he should take?
Okay. So again, whoever has asked this question, IAM is also a part of cybersecurity. So identity and access management, where you are protecting the organization from an access management perspective. Nobody can get into the organization. You're dealing with password policies. You're dealing with access authentication measures, right? You might be working on Active Directory setup. So you already know the basic that, okay, what from an IAM perspective, what are the different ways an attacker can get into the organization? So you already are a part of cybersecurity. But if you want to jump to a specific role, for example, you want to get into security operations, you need to know that, okay, in security operations, what are the different tools you use? Maybe like most security operations, they use SIEM tool for monitoring. How do you do monitoring on a SIEM tool? And when you're doing the monitoring, what are the different things you need to know? What are the kind of attacks you need to know? What is the investigation process do they follow? So if you are getting, you want to get into this flavor of cybersecurity, your preparation would differ accordingly. If you want to go into application security, if you want to test different websites, then again there would be different tracks. So whoever has asked this question, I am, again, congrats, you're already a part of cybersecurity. But if you are aiming one particular flavor, one particular domain, so there are different. There are governance, risk and compliance, there is application security, there is cloud security, there is security operations center, there is vulnerability management. All these are part of cybersecurity. So depending on where you want to go, you should prep accordingly.
Thanks. Also, this is a final question that we are going to take, and then we'll close this session. This is also very, very common questions that probably I have come across in all the master classes that I have conducted. Right. So, is coding languages mandatory in cybersecurity field? If yes, then which language one should expert on?
Okay, so I do not come from a CS background, so I didn't had much skill on coding. But I would say yes, on the job I had to learn it. I did not learn coding, I rather learned Python, I learned scripting. This is because when you are progressing on your career, see, at the initial entry stage, if you're a fresher, nobody would ask you to write malicious codes and then test your website against it. That, okay, you have your own set of repository to conduct uh, application assessment, penetration testing assessment. No, as a fresher, they will say that, okay, these are the payloads which are suggested by OWASP for particular vulnerabilities. Just take this code, put it on the tool, and see how it works. What results do you get? That's what L1 does. But when you progress in your career, like L2, L3, manager, and so on, like technical architect, now, if you're just doing a copy and paste mechanism, that is not something that is going to yield you results, right? Now, if I do not know what is written in that code and I want to create defense or detection for that code, when I'm actually reverse engineering that code and I do not know what is written in the code because I do not understand the language in which it is written, then it gets difficult. So for that reason, you will have to, now it is not like attacker writes in a particular language. An attacker who's good in Java, he will write a code in Java. You know, Air India breach, it was the malicious payload, it was written in C, such a plain language, such a basic language, but it still he was able to hack Air India. There are PHP Trojans, so I cannot go and suggest one particular language. But yes, if you have good skill, good command over one language and one scripting language, I would say, because most of the attackers, they try to launch scripts first to get the data and then they launch the code. That is the reason I learned Python scripting. So because more or less there are the syntax is different, little bit operation mechanism is different, but the base logic, the algorithms that every language uses, that stays the same. So try picking up one language, be it scripting, be it coding, and then master that. So I would not suggest any particular language. It could be anything of your choice, but yes, you should have the understanding of the algorithm really good, that okay, if I tell you that write a program in this language, you should be able to tell me what syntax, what line is doing what. That has to happen in your brain.
Uh, okay, Parul, so probably we'll close the session now. Thanks again a lot, right, for giving such an awesome session. I think everybody will appreciate that, right? Guys, in case if you have any doubt, you can reach out to our counselors, right? We will be back to you. You can register it. They'll be able to resolve your questions. Some of those questions can be, directed to me also from our education counselors if they're not able to resolve it. So please log into it. They will be able to sort out all your career related queries, right? So great. Hope to see you guys in our cybersecurity bootcamp also. Thanks again, Parul. Thanks a lot for such an awesome session, right? Have a nice day, and have a nice day, everybody else also. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. Have a good day.